Everyone, okay, so my name is Dr. Cassie DeSena Jacobs. Welcome. I'm the Director of Mental Health Initiatives. Just a couple of reminders, just some emails we've been getting. All of the recordings for the SMI series are available, but what we do is we post them at the very end of the series. The reason why we do that is because many people pay to attend these, and so we just find it to be the most equitable to post them at the end. Also, our director of communications cleans them up. He cleans up the audio, he cleans up the visual component. And so that is a bit of a process. And so, because there are so many things that tend to be happening towards the end of the semester when you work in higher education, it also just takes some time to clean up 7 videos. But in the meantime, if you're interested, we have our other 2 series that are posted online and available for you to view. You can see it through the School of Social Work Mental Health website. I know it could be a little challenging to navigate, but it is posted there. I am so incredibly excited and feel very privileged for our speaker tonight. Um, Not only is Klara Prachar like part of our small but mighty team at the School of Social Work for our mental health work, but she is one of my very close friends. Um, She really needs no introduction. She's a phenomenal social worker, and we are all, in my opinion, very lucky to hear from her. So I'm just going to turn it right over to her.
Oh, thank you, Cassie. That was such a nice introduction. Also,
That could be nice.
Cassie and I want to give a special shout out to all the students out there that are joining us who are about to crawl the very last mile towards the end of the semester, and you're here with us. So we appreciate that. Y'all got this. Y'all got this. You're gonna make it. The end is near. Okay, so let me share my oh, I have to send you a request to share, Cassie. Okay, thank you.
You're good.
Yeah, I know that I teach, and this process should be smooth for me to pull out a PowerPoint. But sometimes sometimes it gets a little wonky. So, yes, thank you for that introduction, Cassie. My name is Klara. I am faculty here at VCU School of Social Work. Acceptance and commitment therapy is one of my really favorite models of all times because it is so transferable to multiple issues, multiple type of stresses, multiple diagnoses. And I don't know how to better say it, but I just really jive with the foundational aspects of what acceptance and commitment therapy is. I have used ACT mostly when it comes to helping folks with anxiety and phobias and OCD. So I've used ERP and ACT, and those two are really nice models to use together. But ACT is one of those things that you could pretty much use on anything, and you could also use it in tandem with anything. So CBT and ACT is great, DBT and ACT is great, ERP and ACT is great. It's a really nice touch. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the foundation of ACT, do a little bit of comparison. How is ACT different from CBT? Talk about some of the core ACT processes when it comes to psychosis, clinical application, and then engagement strategies when using ACT for folks who are experiencing psychosis, 'cause it's just a little bit different. So, where we're going to start is I'm just going to briefly go over this, but ACT is very transdiagnostic, which means that unlike CBT, it was not developed to specifically target one diagnosis or one sort of symptom. It's across the board. You can almost use it with anything. Actually, the VA hospital one was one of the biggest cheerleaders of acceptance and commitment therapy, and we have quite a bit of research on veterans. So they were really big on ACT just a few years ago when it really started to take off. Another foundational theory with ACT is functional contextualism, which sounds like a big word, but for us social workers, we know what this is. This is just person and environment. Distress doesn't happen in a vacuum. Symptoms don't happen in a vacuum. It all has to do with the environment that you're in, and then also relational frame theory, which basically means that we derive meaning and make sense of the world through relating. So, for example, I'm going to make a silly example because I'm really good at silly examples. You'll never know that you really like apples until you try another fruit, right? But in comparing the two of them, you learn to like things or not like things. And that relating sometimes can get us into trouble. ACT talks a lot about how language traps us. And it's because we have this language that sometimes we can get trapped. So, for example, um, I'll give you an example of when I was not being psychologically flexible. A couple of weeks ago, I don't know if anybody has had any pastries or cakes at Fat Rabbit. Yeah. It's a bakery here in Richmond. And once in a while, you'll catch them do a cake with grapefruit curd and vanilla frosting. And I am someone who really likes chocolate, but I don't love chocolate cake necessarily. I appreciate non-chocolate cakes. So I'm so excited. I want to try this cake finally. And it for me, I live on the north side of Richmond, so getting over to this bakery is just a tiny bit of a trek. Like it's not a big deal. It's just a tiny bit of trek. Um, but I got there, I arrived, and I asked them about the cake, and they ran out and didn't have any more of it, right? And the whole way home, which was maybe like a 15-minute ride, I was just in my head all about it. And yes, I realize, y'all, that this is a first world, very privileged problem to be in the dumps about a slice of cake. I acknowledge that, and I know this. Um, but, I just kept replaying and thinking about how good it would taste to try grapefruit curd and vanilla. What great flavors. And in my head, it just went on and on. And the more I went on and on thinking about it, the more just frustrated I got. But when you think about a squirrel that's out there in the park, they're not thinking about, oh, I just tried a grapefruit cake with vanilla frosting. That was so good. I hope I find more. They don't care about that because they don't have the words to talk about grapefruit curd and vanilla frosting. But if they find something good, they'll be really happy. But they're not going to get into distress about it because they don't have the language to talk about how much they want that cake. So that's relational form theory. Another really important foundation of ACT is that experiential avoidance is the core problem and causes psychopathology, right? So the more we run away from things that distress us, the more that causes issues. So when you think about things that we run away from, and by the way, this is what I look like, the penguins, that's what I look like when I have to grade and I'm trying to run away from the distress of sitting down to grade. So it's the running away, but also ACT recognizes that pain is inevitable, suffering is optional, and usually our distress, our symptoms, our pain is maintained with our brain with the unhelpful thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that we engage in. So if you even think about how recently maybe something that really upset you happened. Maybe it happened 2 hours ago. Maybe it happened 2 days ago, but it's over. The event is done. It's over. There's nothing you can do about it. But I bet that you're probably still in your mind turning it over, thinking about it. And the more you think about it, the more maybe distress comes over you again. But it's over. The event has happened. But in our minds, we keep it alive. So, what's the difference between CBT and ACT? Because ACT is definitely based on CBT and it's considered one of those third wave CBT therapies. So, it's in the same basket with mindfulness-based stress reduction, same basket as DBT, compassion-focused therapy. They're all kind of similar in the sense that they really highlight mindfulness, and they highlight being in the present moment and trying to not necessarily push distress away, but deal with it in more effective ways. So in CBT, what we're focusing on is helping us identify those unhelpful thoughts and beliefs that we have and then restructuring them, right? So a common thought that you may find a client having is, I'm not good enough. To restructure that thought, you might put that thought on trial, so to speak, right? And write down evidence for the thought being true. What is the evidence for me um, not being a good person or not being good enough? And then what is the evidence against me being good enough? With ACT, you don't do any of that. You actually just accept the thought as it is. You try not to fight with it, and you kind of just carry on and engage in behaviors that are more aligned with your values instead of getting caught up with the thought and trying to restructure it. With CBT, the goal is to reduce psychological distress. ACT is ACT is completely different. It's kind of like you flip the therapeutic model on its head. ACT is not at all about reducing anything. But if it reduces symptoms, that's a great byproduct. ACT is really about building psychological flexibility and resilience. That's all it's about. But we're not really trying to directly reduce some sort of a symptom, whether that's hallucinations, delusions, anxiety, disappointment, frustration, none of that. So with CBT, you're changing what you think. ACT, you're changing how you relate to those thoughts, the relationship that you have with your thoughts. And we'll talk more about this. Um, so CBT outcome is reduce symptoms. With ACT, it's build psychological flexibility and live a life that's guided by meanings. So that silly cake example that I gave you guys, that's also a good example of me not being psychologically flexible. If I was psychologically flexible, I wouldn't get caught up in my head about a slice of cake. I would accept it. Oh, hey, they ran out of cake. That's awesome. Thousands of people got that cake. I'm not going to get for it. I'm not going to get it today. I can wait till the next time. Maybe I'll stop by somewhere else to get another cake. That's psychological flexibility, being able to pivot. So, ACT and social work, they are very much aligned. There's a lot of similarities between the ACT model and social work. They are both very much focused on the person and environment and a holistic perspective. ACT also highlights how much distress is impacted by context, which is our environment, what's happening in the world, what's happening in your house, your relationships, how much you're engaged in experiences and opportunities that make your life worth living, the importance of personal values. Those of you that practice and are familiar with motivational interviewing, that's also another similarity where personal values are used quite a bit in ACT to make changes. Very collaborative stance. In ACT, you are not an expert. You are more of a coach and you're helping the client find their own better ways of living. I also like that too because our role is really decentralized. I like this idea that we're really there to work with and partner up with the client and coach them. And there's definitely a focus on empowerment and resilience, just in the fact that ACT is all about helping a client build a better life versus focusing on symptom reduction. ACT and SMI, why are they a good fit? Here I provided just a really quick example. This is a chime recovery model that is often used for clinicians, case managers who work with serious mental illness. And the chime recovery model stands for connectedness, hope, identity, meaning, and empowerment. That is that is what ACT is about as well, finding meaning in life, empowerment, taking active role for your own life, reestablishing a positive identity, and building hope. So it's their SMI and ACT are very well aligned. Before we get started, I also want to point out that even though ACT is going to be, we're going to be talking about ACT and serious mental illness, specifically psychosis, and we're going to focus on hallucinations and delusions. But even though this says SMI, hallucinations also, and most of you already know this, hallucinations happened outside of disorders. They happen outside of schizophrenia and outside of schizoaffective disorder. They can happen with medical conditions. They can happen with personality disorders, such as borderline personality disorder, major depression, you can have hallucinations. People who are taking chemo can hallucinate. And also, people who don't have any diagnoses can also be living with hallucinations. So hallucinations is actually a pretty normal phenomena. I show this little drawing to my clients when I'm doing with ACT because I think this visual actually really helps to understand what ACT is about if you simplify it. ACT is about living more of a life so that your symptoms, not that you're decreasing them actively, but because you're choosing to live an active life, your symptoms sometimes get smaller. So we're working from being somewhere on the left where your life takes up a very small amount and your symptoms take up most of it to a life where symptoms just become a part of it. And this also speaks sometimes to people with serious mental diagnoses who, because of how much they're bothered by their symptoms, their main identity can sometimes become the major depression. It can become the borderline personality disorder. It can become the schizophrenia or the schizoaffective disorder. And I'm sure most of you have seen this where clients really strongly identify with their diagnosis to the point where that is their main focus. And they kind of even forget that they're a whole person outside of just their diagnosis, right? We're more than our diagnoses. I think this visual just kind of clears it up really well. So I already mentioned this. Another goal of ACT is changing the relationships we have with our distress. And what we're going to focus on mainly is how we respond to the distress. When we're talking about psychosis, how do we respond to the symptoms of psychosis? At the end of the day, what we want to do is empower our clients to deal with whatever life brings them and also do what's important, meaning help your client find things that they want to get involved in and do that is aligned with their values. Not about reducing symptoms, but the main goal is increasing a person's psychological flexibility. So here comes the first definition. What is psychological flexibility? It's our ability to be fully present in the moment and being able to recognize and also accept all our thoughts and feelings without being bullied by them or controlled by them. It could be something like, for example, you might be sitting here and it's 6 o'clock. I wonder if any of you guys got a chance to grab a snack and some dinner before you kind of came on. And maybe your stomach is growling and it's telling you, oh my gosh, I'm so hungry. I really just want to go eat something. Or you're tired and you kind of want to lay down, but you don't, right? So accepting that you're feeling those things and not acting on them is recognizing that you're having some distress, recognize that you're having some thoughts and feelings, but they're not bullying you to the point where you are actually acting on them. So when we measure psychological flexibility, we talk about adapting to like fluctuating situational demands, right? So you don't get the cake, so what? So you move on to another bakery and get another cake. You reconfigure your mental resources and you just shift your perspective. Well, you know what? If I'm not going to have cake today, maybe I'll get some tacos. Let's talk a little bit about defining psychosis, and then we'll move into ACT and psychosis. So, just so that everybody's clear, because I recognize that not everybody has been exposed to serious mental illness or folks that are experiencing psychosis. So, really, the definition of psychosis is pretty broad. It's pretty much a collection of symptoms that a person may experience where they're losing some sense of contact with reality. And that could be hallucinations, it could be delusions, which are just false beliefs, ideas of reference where you think that events in outside are happening because of you. So, for example, driving down the highway and seeing a billboard, and you think that it's written for you, and maybe it could be get tacos, and the person could, the idea of reference would be you thinking that that billboard is for you, and maybe God is telling you that you should be eating tacos today. But it could also be difficulty with thinking clearly, problems with concentration, memory, and reasoning. And what we know about serious mental illness is that it actually has really significant impairment when it comes to your ability to concentrate, your memory, and your reasoning skills. You could also experience decline in social functioning, right? You might have some disorganized behavior that doesn't make sense to others. You're wearing a winter parka in the middle of a really hot Richmond day. Some negative symptoms that can show up with serious mental illness, and negative symptoms, think of them as things that get taken away. So that may be loss of motivation. Um, just feeling like you don't want to do anything. You might, in a person's affect, see like complete flatness, whereas positive symptoms are the things that are added. So that could be those hallucinations, those delusions, and of course, depression, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts. But because we're only doing a brief talk today, I'm going to focus, when we talk about psychosis, I'm going to focus on hallucinations and delusions. So just a little bit of definition on hallucinations. So there's many hallucinations, right? When it comes to schizophrenia, the one that is the most common type is auditory hallucinations, which is hearing voices. Um, Hallucinations can be, there's a lot of variety with hallucinations. The voices may sound like it's someone familiar, like it's a family member, your sister-in-law, your brother, your neighbor, your roommate, or it could be a stranger that you've never heard before. It could be female, it could be male, it could also be muffled, so you can't really tell. Most folks with SMI, especially schizophrenia, will hear more than one voice. I think the normal range or the average range is somewhere around three or four. Some folks will report hearing voices for a few seconds. Some will say a few hours a day. And some will say, I hear it all the time. It actually never stops. A lot of auditory hallucinations are commands or personal insults and criticism. So they're literally telling you you're worthless. You are no good. Why don't you just go kill yourself? You're a terrible friend. You're a terrible partner. What's also interesting that voices are mostly self-referential in that they are more likely to be talking about you than about anybody else. In a way, they're very similar to intrusive thoughts, which you may experience if you have anxiety or OCD, in the sense that these auditory hallucinations can be repetitive. They are definitely unintended. People will say that it doesn't sound like me. That's not something I would say. And usually, especially in the Western world, what the voices are saying is viewed as something that's unacceptable. Most people will say they don't really like what the voices told them. And then I included this little tidbit about hallucinations and cultural variance because I think it's very interesting. I'd also like to say that we don't really have enough research on this, y'all. There's very few research that I found that speaks about cultural differences in auditory hallucinations. But this one I'll share with you real quick. And this is something that we talk about in our SMI course for MSW students. So there was this study that was done in 2015, and they were comparing auditory hallucinations, and AVH is the shorthand for that, among people with schizophrenia. And what they did is they took samples from California and UNES in the US. They sampled folks from Ghana and they sampled folks from India. And they found that the content of the hallucinations may actually vary according to what culture they come from. So, what they found is that in the US, we typically did not treat voices as people. We saw them as intrusions into our minds. Most of the time, people said that the content was very violent and that they really disliked the voices and they felt like they were being assaulted by their voices. The samples in Ghana and India reported that they didn't necessarily experience the voice hearing as bad. They were more likely to identify the voices as family members, and they could be family members that are still alive or family members and ancestors that have passed. And they described their relationship with the hallucinations as sometimes even just having conversations with them. They were less troubled by the auditory hallucinations than people in California. And they interpreted the voices as coming from people they knew. And so they viewed them as like they couldn't control the voices because they were coming from other people. They were coming from their ancestors. And I think what's interesting is that what they were saying, what the research was saying, is that, in the Western culture, we tend to view the mind and the self as separate entities, whereas in collectivist cultures, we're more likely to see the mind and self as really integrated and interwoven together. So I thought that was interesting. And the reason why I'm sharing all this with you is that when you're doing ACT with folks with psychosis, we want to get into the nitty-gritty of how many voices, how often do you hear them? Do they scare you? Or are they just annoying? Or do they just talk to you and just say random stuff that you don't have to listen to? So, yeah, there's a reason why we're kind of going over this. Typical responses that people have to hallucinations, suppression, flight, or fight. I would say that arguing is the most common one. Those of you who maybe live in spaces, so Richmond City, in the downtown area and on Broad Street too, we have a lot of folks that we see all the time. And some folks actually live on the corner on Broad Streets that may have possibly SMI, and you will hear them arguing with themselves. And they're more likely actually just arguing with their voices. Um, some do fight their voices, it's true. Some try to run away, and what running away means is maybe subdue the voices by drinking alcohol, taking drugs, or maybe diverting their attention to listening to music really loud, watching a TV show, Um, and suppression is also common, or but not as common as the other two, which means, oh, I'm going to try not to think about it. I'm just going to try to ignore it. I'm just going to try to ignore it. The problem with these typical responses is when you try to suppress something or get away from it or fight it, you're actually just reinforcing the hallucination. Kind of like in the same sense, all of you have probably been told, hey, you guys, don't think about the pink elephant in the room. Don't have any thoughts about the pink elephant on the room. There's um there's this metaphor that we like to use in ACT, which is um, you ask the client to pretend like that they have a beach ball, right? And the beach ball is inflated, and trying to fight or suppress or ignore voices or distress is like throwing an inflatable beach ball into water. So, I mean, it's a bathtub, it's a pool, it's the ocean, it's a lake. And then like landing on top of it and trying to submerge it into the water. You don't, right? But you're spending a lot of effort doing it. Basically, all you're doing is just wasting a lot of energy on doing that. It just makes you more excited. It makes you more anxious. It makes the delusion, the hallucination, the distress more pronounced, and you're getting more tired. When in actuality, what you could be doing instead of trying to fight it is doing something more enjoyable, like going to sit on the beach and doing something completely different. With psychosis, when we look at it from the ACT lens, we don't really see hallucinations and delusions as problematic in and of themselves. What we see problematic is the pain and suffering that's caused by clients trying to fight them or suppress them. Distress and symptoms, just like any other thought, can be noticed or observed, and you don't need to act on the content at all. So we're not going to look at hallucinations or delusions as being negative symptoms, that they're bad, we should try to get rid of them. We're really going to focus on, as clinicians, and ACT is how do you respond to them? And is that working for you? How you're trying to respond to them? How's that going? Have you had any luck? And because you're spending all this time on trying to fight your symptoms, what is that time taking you away from that you could be doing? So before I get into the processes of ACT, y'all, does anybody have any questions so far?
I have a question, Clara, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So the last thing you just talked about, I think that that's a powerful reframe and act. Can you talk about how that is different from other models that are used in SMI?
Yeah, sure. So CBT is another model, and it's such a great model. It's well researched. It's got a great evidence-based practice behind it. And CBT can be used for a lot of things. And CBT for psychosis is actually also another great model. So, for example, with CBT psychosis, what you might be doing is, let's say that one of your um, hallucinations is that I'm going to bring back one of my favorite clients that I've ever had early on in my career. And she had a delusion that her family members are crows and that they are always trying to, what is the word that I'm trying to think of? They're always trying to stop her from doing what she's doing. There's another word for it, and it's just not coming to mind. So she would what I did some case management services with her, and there were times when I had to take her to appointments. So whenever we had to go to the doctor's appointment, we would walk to the company car, and she would ask me because she was probably in her late 60s, but she had back problems. So it was really hard for her to bend down. So she would make me get down on the dirt to make sure there's no birds underneath the car because she was sure that they were in there. And then she said, Clara, but you know, you always have to open the trunk. So I had to open the trunk and make sure that no birds were in there. We got into the car and we drove. Sometimes she would make me stop by 7-Eleven to get a drink and some other snacks. But if the car stopped, that means that the birds could get underneath the car. So I'd have to check again. And then I'd have to go into the trunk, open the trunk, and make sure that there's no birds in the trunk again. With CBT, what you're looking at is you are trying to help the client realize that that delusion that she has is not true, that there are no birds there, right? And I'm going to show you and I'm going to provide evidence to you that the birds aren't there. With ACT, I'm going to do none of that. With ACT, I'm going to say, huh, so you're noticing that you're having some thoughts about birds. Huh, okay. And we're going to do diffusion, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit, because where we want the person to be is to see that thought as just a thought, like the other 7,000 thoughts that you have that you don't need to act on. So instead of trying to verify whether that thought is a good thought, a bad thought, a true thought, or false thought, we're just going to kind of be like, oh, that's a thought. Interesting. I'm having a thought that there might be birds somewhere. Huh. You know, I don't really need to respond to that right now. That thought is just a thought. It's just my brain generating a thought. It might not even be my thought. Who cares? So that's kind of the difference. We are not talking about whether something is true or not. We're just thinking about whether that thought, whether it's helpful to get caught up in that thought, because we also used to spend a lot of time checking on the birds. And when we spent so much time checking on the birds, we weren't doing other things. Like, for example, she loved to garden. And so that took away from the time that she was able to go to the garden and show me what she was planting. And this was, I used to go see her at her house because she didn't have a driver's license. So we could have actually been talking about gardening and doing things that really mattered to her. But because she had to check, we were spending time on reinforcing the content of those delusions. I hope that makes sense, you guys.
I have a
Clara, that was
question.
perfect. And Taylor, I think, has a question for you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just wondering, and maybe you're going to get to this, and I apologize if you already said this, but is there differentiation though if the thought is not birds and it's perhaps something that's maybe a little bit more dangerous? Like, would that make you change your approach or possibly make you more apt to use CBT because the birds aren't going to hurt this particular person, right? But if they think it's someone who's out to get them in a dangerous way, would that change?
No, I'm going to try to just get creative with the diffusion. And she was scared by the thoughts. She thought that they were going to harm her. The reason why she had me check the cars, they were afraid they were going to like cut the brakes. They were going to do something in the engine to mess it up and we'd get into a crash and die. But yeah, I wouldn't change it because lots of people have very negative hallucinations. I wouldn't move to CBT necessarily. I might use some CBT. But CBT will work maybe on one situation. ACT is designed to be more like a lifetime, like more of a lifestyle.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So we're talking about hallucinations, but is there anything, I mean, what are some other things outside of someone having hallucinations that you would use this kind of therapy for?
I would do, so with psychosis, you mean like SMI?
No, outside of SMI, are there other kinds of things? Like, do you use this therapy for like OCD? Or I'm thinking of things that are similar kind of thought patterns, meaning they can't get rid of the thought. Do
Oh,
you?
I love ACT for OCD and use it for
Okay.
anxiety. I would use it on anything, literally anything.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't
Or
think
like,
of, I'm going to think of some things while I'm talking that
okay.
should be used. I just can't think of any, but I'm sure there are. Just none of it is coming to mind. I'm going to briefly, just bear with me, guys. I just want to describe this real quick
Wait, Clara,
as,
you did have one more question. Do you
oh, I
want to
did.
answer
Okay,
it
sorry.
later?
Yeah.
It's Dylan.
Oh, hi, Dylan.
Not a bad thing, Dylan. We love your questions, but
Yeah,
it's
we love your
Dylan.
questions, Dylan. Unmute.
I wasn't sure if that was a back down or if that was a later kind of thing. Really quickly, you talk about this, but like with say suicidal ideation and like intrusive thoughts around suicidal ideation, how would that square with ACT?
Yeah, so I'll give you I've done ACT, the population I've done ACT the most with is my OCD folks. And I'm going to talk about a a good portion of my folks with with OCD were struggling with self-harm OCD. So you are having intrusive thoughts to harm yourself constantly. Drive over the bridge. Oh, you're cutting up strawberries. Why don't you just take that knife and just cut your wrist with it, right? Or anything else. Oh, why don't you jump off that bridge? You're pretty close to it. So you help the person start to diffuse from those thoughts, which means just growing a distance from those thoughts so that you can recognize that that thought is just a thought. That's not really you talking. Our brain actually generates thousands of thoughts a day. Our brain is like your email, y'all. Like, think about how much of your email is spam. That's like our brain. I mean, would you guys disagree that 95% of what goes up here, like you shouldn't say out loud, right? And is not like the best idea ever, right? That's the same thing with thoughts. And I actually will say that to clients with OCD and anxiety, that your brain is just, this is an evolutionary mechanism. Your brain is trained to protect you. So sometimes it'll send you thoughts that really you don't have to pay attention to. You don't have to pay attention to every single thought you have. You don't. For example, I could be having the thought right now, like, oh my gosh, this training is terrible. Clara, you chose the wrong font. Oh, you're just talking about the wrong thing. I, they're in here. And if I listen to them, I'm going to get completely derailed. So I'm going to try to kind of be aware that they're there and that my brain is generating them because that thought is trying to protect me and it's telling me to just shut down my computer and run so that I don't make a fool of myself here. But I can't do that. So I'm going to be like, okay, that thought's there. I'm not going to listen to you. Bye. I'm gonna just, ask you, give you a nice little snack in my brain, turn the TV on for you, but I'm gonna leave you alone. I'm not gonna pay attention to you.
Thank you. And really quickly, I'm sorry to double dip here, but like with the crow situation or the bird, there was acceptance of the fact that the thought was there, but it was also, it sounded like not wanting to reinforce the belief that it was there. So what was that line you walked again?
She did ask me a couple of times, do you see the birds? Do you hear them? And I would say, no, I don't hear them. I don't hear them at all. I tried not to talk about it with her. And I just tried kind of getting to her into a direction of not paying so much attention to them and trying to get her to see that you can have a thought and not act on it, right? So this is something that you can do too, right? Like I will tell a client to say out loud, hey, client, grab a pen. Um, and while you're holding this pen, I want you to say, hmm, and think to yourself, I can't hold this pen. I can't hold this pen. So you kind of realize the discrepancy. I can have a thought that says, I can't hold this pen, but hey, look at here, I'm holding this pen. It's kind of simple, but
Awesome. Thank you for that clarification.
Courtney,
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I have to laugh a little bit while I'm listening to this, as I just come from therapy and I can hear my therapist in my head using the very common, you know, phrase of it's out of your control. Like you can't do anything about it. It's out of your control. And so like while we're talking about this, I can hear her, kind of saying
totally.
that because it's the same thing. Like,
Yeah.
this is a thought, it's there. I recognize it. Awesome. And then, with situations in life, this is something that happened. It happened. I can't do anything about it. I can think about it, but it's out of my control. As
Yeah.
I, yeah,
Yeah,
cool.
totally. Yeah, same thing. It's really what gets us into trouble is that we're spending way too much time controlling our thoughts
Mhm.
instead of just letting them be there and not really pay attention to them. Um, and I'm going to show you another way of kind of another a metaphor of how you could talk about that with your clients, in the sense that you don't have to listen to every thought you have in your head. And I really do think that, the brain just does generate stuff sometimes that doesn't make sense. It's okay. All right. It's okay. So the six processes here is what we're going to teach our clients. And I'm just going to go through this quickly because I'm going to do it with psychosis in just a tiny little bit. But with ACT is grounded in these six processes. And these are the six processes that you're always trying to ground your client in. Like think about this as the client's shoes, right? Helping them accept their thoughts, helping them accept their emotions without trying to change them, without trying to avoid them, just letting them be. There's cognitive diffusion, which is diffusing from the things that you're experiencing and seeing them as just fleeting mental constructs instead of who you are. Helping the client contact with the present moment, which is basically mindfulness. Self as context is the hardest one to kind of really explain to clients, but it's teaching a client to see themselves as an observer of their mind instead of getting fused and hooked with the things that are happening in their brain. I recently just had this very strange 2 weeks of y'all just literally not getting anything right. Nothing. Like every day I would wake up and I would mess something up. Just went to the dentist, forgot to bring what I needed. Went to class, forgot my PowerPoint at home. Just like constant barrage of doing something terrible, right? So self as context would be, oh my God, Clara, you're such a mess. Oh my gosh, Clara, you can't do anything right. Oh my gosh, Clara, who gave you this job? That's me getting fused with self and context instead of saying, hey, I'm noticing that I'm having this thought that I'm a mess. I get it. Yeah, I get it. Because I just did A, B, and then I did C. That makes sense. But it's not who I am. It's just what's happening to me right now. All right. So we got to be really careful about what we identify and fuse with when it comes to the things that we think about ourselves. Another common one is maybe your clients with trauma. You all have probably heard this a million times that people with significant trauma may call themselves damaged goods, may call themselves broken. That's the opposite of self as context. That's self as content. You're fusing with this identity that you're broken. But there's so much to us as a human being. There's no way you can be broken every single second of the day. But you're fusing with that because your brain is telling you that. There's so many different parts of you. There's things that you probably did well. You probably got out of bed really great. Like you didn't fall, you put your pants on, you put your shoes on, like you did it. You didn't spill your coffee, right? Like there's things we do that are good. Values is important because we want to link up changes to values and then committed action, helping put into plan some sort of a very identified plan of I'm going to commit to this, even though this is going to be hard for me. I'm going to do this, and this is why I'm going to do this. So this is how ACT works. You will explain what ACT is and what it's based on, and you will teach all those processes that we just went over using metaphors, using demonstrations, using experiential exercises in the session, and then homework, which sometimes we call exercises because homework sounds so, ugh, like so daunting that you have to do this. So sometimes we call those exercises that you can take home with you. Um, I want to highlight the word workability. which I spelled wrong. I recognize that I missed an A. We're not going to argue whether a hallucination is right or wrong. We're not going to argue whether you have a right to feel anxious or not. We're not going to argue whether the anxiety is real or not. What we're going to look at is how does your behaviors based on that anxiety, does that work for you? Does it work for you? Right? Like one of the things that we do in response to anxiety is avoidance. How many of you guys are avoiders too? I'm not the only one, right? I sometimes avoid. Yeah. So then I'm not going to talk with you about, oh, that's a terrible coping skill, Clara. Oh my gosh, you should really pick something that's way better and more positive. No, I'm going to ask you, so how's that work? What are the benefits of that? And then what are the negative consequences? Do you think it works for you? Because if a client says it works for me, then I'm not going to argue with them about it because we want to be person-centered and we want to do what the client wants to work on. So I may shift and say, okay, let's work on something else. But in the meantime, maybe keep that in the back of my head and come back to it at a later time. So how's that going? That response, that avoidance response to anxiety. Just wondering if anything new popped up in terms of it really working for you and not working for you. And we're teaching our clients these four things. We want to help them identify in what ways are you trying to control things, right? And sometimes when we try to control things, it could be like, for example, you get stressed out over something and you think about it and ruminate on it for days and hours. Most of the time you get hooked into rumination because there's this part of your brain that's like, yeah, Claire, keep doing it. Keep thinking about it. Yeah, 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 yeah. Mull it over more. You mulled it over for a year. Oh, no, 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 no. You know what? 2026 is the year that you're going to figure this out. Keep going. It literally is making you feel like you're going to get something out of it. If you just think about it a little more, you're going to come up with an answer. And that is a control strategy. You're trying to control things by thinking of another intervention. We want to help our clients accept that these thoughts, these feelings, these hallucinations or delusions are there. They're just there, and we're going to accept them non-judgmentally. We're going to help them just notice that they're there without struggling with them. And we're going to help them focus on behaviors that are more aligned with their values. And I'll give you guys an example so this kind of makes sense to you a little bit more. But with hallucinations, really want to highlight that we are not going to modify the content of the voices. So if the voice is telling you you're a piece of crap, um, we're not going to fight with it. We're not going to change it. We're not going to say, hey, can you maybe the, can you change what the voice is saying to you? Like instead of crap, maybe rap or something different. We're not doing that. We're not going to get psychodynamic and think about, gosh, I wonder where that voice is coming from. And I wonder what it means. Because there's usually not really any origin or deep meaning in the voices. We're not going to change their occurrence, their form, and we're not going to figure out whether they're real. And the same thing goes with any other symptoms outside of the SMI field. Don't care whether it's real or not, because if you're going to talk to a client about whether depression, where you feeling sad is real or not, whether you should be feeling sad or not, you're going to get caught up in the content. So I'm going to bring up the Hexaflex again, and now we're going to go through it using SMI example. So let's start with acceptance. And you can start anywhere, you all, with clients, depending on where you think that they will connect. So usually I start either with acceptance, present moment, or values, because those seem to be the most approachable ones. So most of you probably already also know this if you've practiced any mindfulness. Acceptance is just about accepting something without judging it. So if you're a person that's heavily impacted by rainy days, for example, your mood just tanks, you just feel kind of blah, ugh, um, you have lots of judgment about it's raining. You kind of say to yourself, I don't like rain. Oh, I wish it wasn't raining. My day would be so much better if it wasn't raining. Every day is like this. Why does it always have to be like this? I just want the sun out. I'll be happy when the sun's out. And we teach our clients just to say, yep, it's raining. Sure it is. I don't have to have any thought about that because that's not going to change. Rain is not going to change who I am. I'm not going to let it get to me. So learning non-judgmental acceptance. Um, it's almost like
Mm.
have have you all seen there's a great act metaphor that talks about acceptance being like, for example, your mind is like the sky, whether it's raining or whether it's thundering or it's snowing or it's cloudy or it's not, the mind doesn't change regardless of what the weather is like. This is kind of the same kind of thought. Acceptance is accepting everything for it is, knowing that you can't change the rain, right? Like I can fight. I can be like, oh, I wish it was raining. It sucks, but I'm causing myself distress by being upset about it. And when I'm distressed about it, what I'm not doing is the thing I would be doing if it wasn't raining, right? Which could be, I don't know, it could be cleaning something, it could be going to work, I could be snuggling with my dog. I'm doing none of that because I'm sitting here being really bummed that it's raining. We use a lot of metaphors in ACT, and I'm going to show you some of them. So this is the first one, and this is a metaphor that you can use with your clients, and it's about acceptance, and it's letting go of the struggle with voices, but you can insert anything here, letting go of the struggle with disappointment, with feeling sad, with being frustrated, with being angry. When we are trying to help a client accept something, what we're actually doing is we're trying to show them ways that they're getting really caught up with the content of whatever that feeling is. So here I'm giving the example of voices, but it could be feeling frustrated, right? I'm sure that most of you guys have been frustrated with a coworker or something happening at work. When we're going on and on and on about it, it means we're hooked. We're hooked in it. We are just because it's impacting you. You're getting upset instead of thinking about um, other things. And that could be like pleasant things or thinking about a song or thinking about your dog, thinking about your dog, your loved one, or thinking about what you're going to eat for dinner or where you're going to go for vacation. You're thinking about this work situation. The weird part is the work situation is over, right? Like there's not much you can do with it. It's done and happened, but we're still in our brain, kind of like trying to massage it and get upset about it. We want to also help our clients recognize how they're responding to things that they're not accepting and introduce an alternative way of letting go of voices. And this video is going to show you how to let go. And I chose videos and metaphors that were short. So I'm not necessarily saying this is the best video. It was just I chose the ones that were under 2 minutes.
Oh no, I need to resist this feeling. I don't want it. I don't like it. I need your attention. Struggling with our emotions is like tug of war with a monster. It's exhausting and can feel scary. Could you drop the struggle, let go of that rope, maybe lean into the experience and wonder what else could be going on? Phew, that feels easier. I was only trying to get your attention and pass on a message. Oh, sorry. What did you want to tell me? Could you drop the struggle, acknowledge the emotion or feeling, and just allow it to be there? It will pass in its own time. When we struggle with our emotions, it can just make it worse. I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were sad. It's okay. I'm here for you. Thank you. Message delivered and received.
I hope you guys heard the sound. Yeah. So the point of this is to show a client how you get caught up with a struggle with something difficult. And yeah, y'all, if I'm going to do this with clients, yes, I would have a rope in my room. And yes, I might play a tug of war with them so they can experientially um, kind of experience what it's like to struggle. The other thing I also do is this is another popular one, and I do this with students in class. This is one of those Chinese finger traps, I think is what they call them. And I'm going to show you the same concept, but just with a different metaphor. If you all have ever played with this, um, you're asking the client to put both their fingers in this finger trap, right? When you're struggling with something, you get really anxious and you start being like, no, 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 I gotta run away. I gotta fight this. I gotta ignore this. I don't like feeling sad. I want to feel different. I want to feel different. The problem is when you get that heightened, you cannot pull out of the finger trap because you're stuck. The only way to pull yourself out of the finger trap is actually to put the fingers together, and it loosens up the grip, and then you can take out the fingers. This one's old. So it's about loosening up, being more open, and stop fighting with whatever that you're fighting with. Sadness is a popular one. Sadness is something that we fight all the time. We don't like to feel sad. The other one that I can think of that all of us can connect on is feeling uncomfortable. No one wants to feel uncomfortable. I think about that with clients, right? Like something happens and you're feeling uncomfortable. This is what I usually say. If, if I say something silly in the middle of class, in my head I'm thinking, could we just have an earthquake that could just swallow me right now? That would be so great. You want to run away. You don't want to feel it. But the problem is that you're spending so much time running to run away that there's not much time doing anything else. Does that make sense? Drop the
Yes.
struggle. Drop the struggle. You're still feeling sad, but the feeling of sadness isn't taking control of you anymore. It's not telling you to hide under the bed, to lock yourself up in the closet with 3 bags of chips and 2 pints of ice cream. The sadness is still there. You're just not reacting to it in your usual ways. You don't let it, we talk in ACT that your thoughts are bullying us. You don't let the thought bully you. I think about when I used to do anger management groups. ACT would have been perfect for that. That was early on in my career, but I totally would have done an ACT group because what happens is that most clients, when they react, anger management, and it was court ordered. So these were folks that were doing road raging. And when they got triggered, they felt like they had to act. So they would get out of their car, they would throw something on the other car, or they would drive recklessly, right? Because they felt like they had to act on the thought. You can have the thought. You can validate that you're having the thought that you're really mad, but you don't have to act on it in ways that actually cause you destruction and problems. Now you have to go to group therapy once a week. You actually have to pay money to go to group therapy, and now you have to pay court fines. So it's not that, hey, rage driving is wrong. It's not working, is it? Because now you're here with me instead of being out there with your friends and at 6 o'clock at night or 7. And you're spending all this money on this when you could have spent that money on something else. So that's the workability of it.
Oh no, I
Diffusion is diffusing from the thoughts, and I'm going to show you how that's done. But usually with SMI and psychosis, what we're paying attention is how does the client see their auditory hallucinations, right? So clients might sometimes say, oh, I can't do anything because the voices are so loud. Oh, I can't get up. I just have to sit here. It's too loud. They will sometimes say, I have to listen to them. I have to listen to what they tell me. If they tell me that I need to that I need to steal a pack of cigarettes from Wawa, I have to do it. Otherwise, I'll be in trouble. And then what meaning are they putting on the what voices, right? Are you afraid that they'll harm you? Are you afraid that they're not going to like it if you go out and then they'll get louder? What's the meaning? What are you assuming will happen? So we want to know that. And when we're diffusing, this is borrowed from CBT, but you're just taking it a step further. So in CBT, let's say that the unworkable thought is I'm worthless. We're choosing this thought because sometimes when you're struggling with the thought of being worthless, it actually stops you from doing things, right? So if you're in class, you're going to stop doing your homework and your projects because if you're worthless, what's the point? I'm worthless anyways. I'll never graduate. Um, you're not going to ask the person you like out on a date because what's the point? I'm worthless. So I'm worthless is the thought. In CBT, diffusion looks like, oh, I'm hearing a voice telling me that I'm worthless. But you can see already that you're developing a little bit of a distance from the thought. There's a difference between saying I'm worthless and then I'm hearing a voice telling me that I'm worthless. If the example was I'm mad, taking it a step above would be, oh, hey, I'm noticing the feeling of, I'm noticing that I'm noticing that I'm mad. The third step in diffusion is I'm noticing that I'm hearing a voice say that I'm worthless. So you're creating another level of difference. Hey, I'm noticing that I'm experiencing a feeling of discomfort. I'm noticing that I am experiencing a feeling of confusion, feeling of sadness. So you're diffusing by actively training yourself to think about the thought a different way. So instead of saying, oh, I'm such a wreck, hey, I'm noticing that I'm thinking that I'm a wreck. I'm noticing I'm having a thought that I'm a wreck. And I'm noticing that I'm experiencing that I'm having a thought that I'm a wreck. And there's lots of little tricks that you can do to help people diffuse. This is one of them, just by taking that hallucination or that thought that's troublesome and doing this kind of work. Or one of my favorites, y'all, and this is going to be silly, is I have people write down the thought that's not working for them. So let's say, for example, it's I'm worthless. Um, you know what? I don't have what I need here because I took it to the office with me at school. But I'll have them write it on a piece of paper. And then in the office, I have this little airplane. And so I'll have them write worthless. I'll literally paste this on my wall next to the plane. And it looks like a banner that the plane is just dragging around, almost like, when you go to the beach and you see the planes with the banners that say, "Hey, will you marry me?" or 50% off windows, or "Come get your car cleaned over here." Same thing. And when you see that thought, that hallucination, that symptom far away from you, you get a different perspective on it. You kind of are like, "Oh my gosh, that's so silly." For most clients, this works. For some clients, this works immediately. They'll laugh at themselves and be like, oh my gosh, this is so ridiculous. For some, it takes a little bit more, and you might have to do some other diffusion strategies. And ACT has a ton of them. But you're just trying to help the person understand that a thought is just a thought is just a thought. It's just a thought. But it's a thought. The thought can't hurt you. It can't do anything. It actually has no power because your brain just generated a bunch of letters together and they happen to come up with I'm worthless. And it's probably just trying to protect you from something, but it's overly protective. It's kind of like, I don't have a newer car. Mine is 20 years old, but people tell me in the new cars that they automatically come with cameras in the back and they automatically come with a sensor in the back. So like if you have that car and you're backing up and like let's say like a box flies by you because it's windy that day or a squirrel, it'll start beeping, right? That's kind of our brain. It doesn't know that some thoughts are harmful or others. It's just trying to warn you, but it doesn't really know if that thing behind is dangerous. You get to decide whether it's dangerous. You get to decide whether I'm worthless is something you want to pay attention to. You decide. The brain just doesn't know. It's just kind of warning you like, oh, you're gonna mess up this, you're gonna do something wrong. But it's not true. It's think of it as like that a very oversensitive car thing. The next of the hexaflex is mindfulness and introduce this as soon as possible. And sometimes I think in our field, we conflate mindfulness with meditation, and they're two very different things. Mindfulness is just being aware of what's happening, right? Mindfulness is an awareness process. It's not a thinking process. It's paying attention to the moment, remaining open and curious, non-judgmental. This morning, I was in a rush to get to school because the students were registering. And because I was in a rush and also thinking about the presentations that were happening that day in class and, doing my usually anxiety, like, I hope it goes okay. And I was so just on automatic pilot that I forgot to bring my reading classes to class, which was not actually as bad as it could have been because we had presentations all day. And so thankfully, I didn't really need them. But I'm sure that all of you have 10 things you could give me right now where paying attention brought you a little bit of problem. Not paying attention brought you a little problem because you're still stuck in here with random thoughts, just tossing them around and not paying attention to what's happening on the outside. So this is one of my favorite metaphors. And if this one doesn't work for you or for your client, there's a ton of them. And by the way, I made a list of all these YouTube links, and I'm going to share it with you guys so that you can watch them yourself. I created a folder, and I'll give you guys some things in there that include some books to read if you want to, and just some little articles. And scales. So this is the sushi train metaphor, and I'm going to let you guys watch it because I don't think you need me to explain this to you.
So imagine that you're sitting in front of a sushi train at one of those Japanese restaurants, and there are all these dishes going past on the train. And in the center, there is the chef creating all of these dishes. The chef is like your mind, and the dishes are like all of those thoughts, ideas, memories that keep cropping up, coming and going all day long. Some of the dishes on that sushi train may be very appealing. Some of the stuff on that sushi train may be unappealing. And some of it may be neutral, and take it or leave it. And it's much the same with our thoughts, memories, ideas that pop up throughout the day. Some of them are very pleasant. We really like them. We want to hold on to them. Some of them are very unpleasant and we just want to turn away from them, get rid of them. And a lot of them are kind of neutral. They're neither positive nor negative. So all day long, the sushi chef of our mind is creating all these different dishes, and the train keeps carrying them round and round. These thoughts keep cropping up throughout the day. Now, we can learn to step back and watch our thoughts coming and going in much the same way that we can step back and watch that sushi train. An unpleasant dish pops up on the train. We don't have to turn away in disgust and horror. A pleasant dish comes by. We don't have to reach over and grab it and stuff it down our mouth. We can do the same with our own thoughts. We can step back with an attitude of openness and curiosity and watch them come and stay and go in their own good time.
I hope you guys enjoyed it. I just love the little brain with the, it's so cute. Other really common act metaphors are passengers on a bus where you are driving the bus and the other passengers are thoughts, feelings, delusions, memories that pop up and try to take over your day. The gist is that you're driving the bus. You can choose how you react to them. You can actually let them talk and talk all they want and just not listen to them. If they're telling you to stop, you don't have to do anything. They're not gonna do anything to you. You can just keep driving. So, right, this idea that Noticing what's going on in your head from an observer perspective, knowing that you can choose what you pay attention to. Values, don't even have to explain this to you guys, but this is, trying to help our clients align their behaviors with values and what's important to you. I had a client with schizophrenia, and for him, it was really, really important. His goal, he said to me, was get a girlfriend. And I said, "Oh, that's great. But I'm doing case management and I'm not sure if I could actually help you with that. But tell me what it is about having a girlfriend that would really make your life better." So just he talked about having someone to talk to. He talked about companionship. His value was really personal relationships and just being able to be with other people. So we took that value and let it guide our goals. He didn't, I had left the unit by the time he did this, but he eventually worked his way to actually do some volunteering for NAMI. And that was years later. And guess what, y'all? He met his girlfriend at NAMI. It was beautiful. But he was able to exercise that value by being with other people, getting companionship, being with people that he could talk to, that he could laugh with, because he was someone that this was when I was working out in Charles City, Providence Forge, and it's a really rural area. So he didn't have anywhere to go. He didn't have a lot of relationships. He lived with his sister, and there wasn't much social interaction going on. She had her own job. And one of the things I like to do with ACT is this little graph. So with every decision we make, and think about this as the way that you respond to distress. So let's use again that example of discomfort. Let's say that there's something uncomfortable that's happening with you at work that just, well, maybe let's not use that one. Let's use frustration. When you get frustrated something, you have a choice. You have a choice to really get hooked up in the content of it and in the feelings of frustration to feel it fully. Or you also have a choice to just kind of let it go. If your value, for example, is social relationships, when you choose to get caught up in the frustration, then maybe you meet up with a friend and you spend the whole time maybe talking about this frustrating thing. And maybe what you're not doing is really building that relationship, because all you're doing is just venting and venting. So if I was sitting with you, I would ask you, okay, so you went out to lunch with your friend and you vented the whole hour and a half. Was that choice a move away from your value of personal relationships or toward the value of personal relationships? And the person would say away, because it didn't really do anything to build that relationship, right? So every decision and every response to something distressing we have, you could look at it as an away move or a toward move. Is this getting me closer to my values in life or away? For some of you, that your value may be learning new things. If you spend a whole 2 weeks without learning a new thing, is that not learning away or is it toward you? Sometimes, like, how when you learn something new could really rejuvenate your senses. So I use this quite a bit. I think it's a good, really simple model. Your behavior, your action, your choice. Is it an away move or a toward move? And then they get to decide what they want to do with that. Do I want to change it because, oh, shoot, that's not getting me closer to my goal? And then self as content, and that's the last thing that I'll talk about. This is the observing self. And this one is the hardest one to really explain to people. It's because it's rather theoretical. So when I'm working with people that might have SMI, where your cognitive abilities are sometimes really taxed just because of the symptoms, I will talk about your noticing self instead of saying self as context. But the stage show metaphor is another really good one to help you understand what self as context means, which is helping your client understand that their thoughts don't really matter so much and that you can be just an observer of your thoughts.
Life is like a stage show. And on that stage are all your thoughts and feelings and emotions and memories and everything that you can see, hear, touch, taste, and smell. And this show is changing all the time from moment to moment. And there's a part of you that can step back and watch that show. Zoom in and take in the details, zoom out and take in the big picture. Shine a spotlight on one part of the show to really illuminate what's happening there, or bring up the lights on the whole stage show all at once. And this part of you is what I like to call the observing self or the noticing self. And no matter what shows up on that stage, no matter how the show changes from moment to moment, this observing self part of you is always there, always available. So let's suppose you're out with a bunch of mates having a lovely meal at one of your favorite restaurants. And to begin with, your attention is all focused on your friends and the food, engaging in the conversation, enjoying the meal. But then suddenly you hear this loud, annoying voice from a guy at the table behind you, and he's yakking on about something in this loud voice that really gets your goat. Suddenly the spotlight shifts and all your attention is on this guy and what he's saying. And you're so irritated by the sound of his voice and the stuff that he's saying, and you're getting more and more wound up with everything that comes out of his mouth. So what's happened in the meantime, while all your attention is on this guy, your friends and this lovely meal have just faded into darkness. But what happens if you swing that spotlight back onto what matters most to you in this moment? And having a good time with your friends, having a laugh, sharing stories, enjoying the food. So the greater our ability to notice where our spotlight is shining and to redirect it to the part of the stage show that we really want to illuminate, that matters most in this moment, the greater our ability to transform our experience of life.
Just one more thing I want to talk about real quick, and then I'll stop and ask you guys if you have any question. The last part of the Hexaflex that you're going to be working on with your client is helping them with committed action, which is helping them. You never want to force a client to do anything they don't want, but it's fostering willingness, being willing to experience discomfort in order to live a more fulfilling life. And that can apply to anything. When you think about all of you, a lot of you went to graduate school or you went to college for your degrees to become clinicians, right? You had to experience lots of discomfort, meaning you went to school, maybe you weren't working, so you weren't making money. You were up till all hours of the night doing homework. That's the discomfort that you had to go through to get to the other side of the goal that you wanted to achieve. Sometimes how this works with clients is clients will realize that while they don't necessarily love some of the symptoms that medication gives them, the medication actually helps them be more calm. So they're willing to go through the discomfort of some of those symptoms in order to get through the greater goal, which is feeling more calm. So working on, hey, how willing are you to experience some of this discomfort fully and not run away from it? So I'm just going to stop there because I know we're running out of time, and I just want to, if you guys have any questions, and I will also in the chat, let me drop in a folder that I made with some stuff that you guys can look at, including a psychologically flexible scale, the videos I showed, and some book recommendations.
I will also email out that folder to all the attendees, Clara. But because I want to be respectful of your time, I think you probably have time for one, maybe two questions because we will end at 7:30. So you have a question
Yeah.
in the chat from Jessica.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I mean, this is not a model. This is a model that really asks you to embrace the discomfort because the discomfort is going to be part of life anyways. And the quicker that we can kind of get through it, the easier it'll be for us. I don't ever want to you want to be real with people. Like it is really hard. Honestly, you guys, it's hard for us. I get frustrated with some things, and sometimes I just get so overtaken by things because it kind of feels good, right? But it takes work to say, Clara, no, this is not helpful right now. You need to focus on this. It's hard work. It's like going to the gym. It only gets easier if you're willing to practice, but it's hard. Absolutely, client, it's hard. So we're going to practice in session all day so that you can work on it on your own when you go home. Let's work on it now because you want to do it with them so that they don't get home and feel overwhelmed by trying to do some of this stuff.
I think there's time for one more question if anyone else has a question for Clara. Okay, we have another one of these coming up in 2 weeks. Many of you, I recognize your names, are signed up. If you're not signed up, please consider signing up. We only have two more left. We're very grateful for your attendance at the series.